金钱看齐，墙上写着秦香莲的32岁了，转个当朝，驸马郎的旗帜王啊，满皇上的会2岁了，转个当朝。
What's going on, everybody? Toxic here, and as some of you guys may notice, I'm actually using a brand new microphone. Before I was using a Blue Snowball, but I actually just recently upgraded to a Blue Yeti. So make sure to let me know if you guys notice any change in the quality or maybe even the sound of my voice. But anyways, this commentary is going to be about the time when I accidentally blew up my neighbor with a homemade cat bomb. And for some of my longtime subscribers, you guys actually might recognize this kind of video because when I had about 100 subscribers, I actually did the same story on a video, but I had to take that video down. But I figured now that I have 1,000 subscribers, a lot of new people would love to hear about this story, so let's get into it. So this all happened about 2 years back when I was 13 years old, and me, my brother, and my neighbor used to always go to the gas station and buy these little packs of caps. They contained about 40 caps in each pack, and 40 caps would make about 2 bombs or so. So we went to the store, we bought our caps, we went home, then we cut up the caps into tiny little pieces, and then we put them in a toilet paper roll, and then we put match heads on the top, and then we usually just taped it up, and then we lit it on fire, and then it exploded. But one day, we got a little bored of making these tiny little bombs. They were about the size of your fist. So one day we decided to go to the store and we loaded up on caps. We bought about 4 or 5 packs, which is roughly 160 to 200 caps total. So after we bought all our caps, we headed over to my house, then we started to cut them up in these tiny little pieces. And after we finished cutting them up, we formed this little pile, which was actually not really that little. It was about 6 inches wide and about 4 or 5 inches tall, full of just pure caps. Well, like I said earlier, we usually put the caps in these tiny little toilet paper rolls, but when we tried to fill up the toilet paper roll with it, it only filled up about 1/5 of all of the caps. So we decided to fill up a water bottle with caps instead. So after we got the water bottle, then we started putting all the caps in. And after all the caps were gone, we still had about 2 or 3 inches of room on the top of the water bottle left. So we got a bunch of matches, then we cut off the match heads of the match, which if you guys don't know what they are, it's the part that ignites the flame. And we cut off the match heads, then we filled up the rest of the water bottle full of match heads. So after that, he decided to try and make a fuse for the bomb. So he took a sparkler that he found in his garage and he stuck it inside of the top of the bomb, which clearly would not have worked anyways. I don't even know why he tried to do it. But after he got the sparkler inside of it, he decided to light it the next morning because he said his parents would not be home. So he told me to hide it at my house for the night, then the next day to bring it over to his house at 11 o'clock in the morning. So exactly like he told me to do, the next day at 11 o'clock, I headed over to his house with the bomb in my backpack. So when I got to his house, he was just sitting in his driveway waiting for me to get there. And then he told me we had to go kind of quick because he told me his dad was getting home within the next 30 minutes. So right after he said that, I was like, we need to get this started now then. So he asked me if he could see the bomb, so I pulled it out from my backpack, then I gave it to him, and he was just looking at it a little bit. And I was just biking around at this point, and I heard him say, "Oh, damn it." And then I looked up, and the sparkler actually fell out of the bomb. So he decided to be really stupid and push it back in, and if you guys don't know, if you hit something against caps hard enough, they ignite. So when he pushed in the sparkler, he ignited one cap, which pretty much just set off a chain reaction and led to them all exploding. So pretty much this big ass cat bomb just explodes right inside my neighbor's hands, and I look over and he's just covered with blood. His hands are all covered with blood, his face is bleeding, he's screaming there, and I have no idea what to do. I'm only 13 years old, and that thing was about as loud as a shotgun. So after that, I grabbed his arm, and he could barely even see because his eyes were just covered with caps, but I just grabbed his arm and I started to lead him inside of his house. When we got inside of his house, I got that little thing in the sink where you can like squirt water out, and I was just trying to spray it on his face and his hands and his body just to clear off some blood so it wouldn't look as bad, but it ended up looking a little bit worse because once the blood went away, he had these huge cuts and gouges inside of his face and his hands and his stomach, and it was just really bad. There was blood all over the floor of his house. and I was just like, oh shit, what do I do? And then I suddenly started hearing all these knocks on his door, so I decided to look outside, and I saw all of these people just sitting outside. They're just like, are you okay? Are you okay? And they don't really know what my neighbor looks like that well, and they don't know what I look like. I don't think they've ever seen me before, but I had to pretend to be my neighbor, and I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And the reason I was trying to pretend to be my neighbor was so that they didn't call the police or an ambulance or something, because I just didn't want to get in trouble. I was only 13 years old, and I didn't really handle the situation that well, but after that, I was like, yeah, I'm fine, blah, blah, blah. And then they left to go back to their house, and then I was like, okay, I have to get him to look a little better so that nobody notices, and it was pretty much impossible because his face was bleeding, he had cuts all over, his stomach had a huge gash in it, his face had a huge gash in it, I could see his bone in his hand, and it was just awful. I knew I was gonna get caught, but I tried my best not to, and after that, so then I look out the window once again, and the one thing I didn't want to see, I saw his dad driving up the driveway, and I was like, oh, whatever, we are already screwed, so there's no way I can possibly prevent getting in trouble. So when his dad opened the door, I was like, yeah, we were just hitting caps with a hammer, and then one accidentally blew up in his face and it was too big, because that sounds a lot better than, oh, we made a bomb and I accidentally blew up your son. But even with my horrible excuse, he was still pretty angry. So he was just like, you know what, just go home and I'm gonna take him to the hospital and see if he's okay. So he took him to the hospital, and luckily, he never told my parents what happened, so I thought I would be off the hook. So when I got back home, I tried to act as normal as I possibly could, which was pretty hard considering I just saw my neighbor get blown up in his face and there was blood all over, and I was shaking and my ears were still ringing because that thing was really loud. And about 7 or 8 hours later, it was about nighttime, and I was like, okay, all I need to do is just get through this day and hopefully I won't get caught. But we got a knock on the door, and I was like, who could this be? I thought it would be my neighbor saying he'd be okay or something, but when we got to the door, it was the police. So when me and my dad opened the door, they were just like, we had reports of this really loud noise coming from this area. Do you know what it could be? And I was like, oh yeah, that was me and my neighbor. We were just hitting caps with a hammer because, like I said earlier, that sounds a lot better than I accidentally blew up my neighbor with this homemade bomb I made. So I didn't want to get in trouble, so I said that, and he was like, okay, well that can be really dangerous, so you guys shouldn't do that anymore. And I was like, okay, I understand. And then after that, he asked me one more question. He said he rang my neighbor's doorbell, and he got no answer, and he said, do you know where your neighbor could be at this time by any chance? And I was like, oh yeah, I think he's at camp. And then he's like, do you know when he could possibly be getting home so we can speak to him? And I was like, sorry, I don't know when. And then he was like, okay, well, remember, just be careful when you're playing with caps and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, goodbye. Then he left, and then I was like, okay, so far I'm not in trouble. Just hopefully nothing bad happens. So when the next day came along, I was outside with my dad doing some yard work, and suddenly my neighbor and his dad drove up his driveway, and they were getting back from the emergency room. I was just sitting there saying to myself, oh my god, if he comes over here and tells my dad what happened, I am just screwed. So I was just sitting there, I was trying to act as normal as I could, and then suddenly I saw my neighbor's dad walking over to my house. And for some reason, my neighbor told his dad what really happened because, you know, my neighbor wouldn't get in trouble for me accidentally bombing him. So my neighbor told his dad what happened. Then when my neighbor's dad was walking over to my house, he started telling my dad all what happened, and I was like, oh, it's done, whatever. So later that day, my dad came inside. He was really mad at me. He was like yelling at me and stuff, and he took my PS2 when those were cool to play, and I was really mad because I didn't get to play my Harry Potter game that night, or the next night, because he was really mad at me because I practically just bombed my neighbor, and my neighbor's eyes he couldn't see for about 2 or 3 days. He had to get a cast on his hand because I pretty much almost blew off his thumb, and it was just really bad. But luckily, he still has that shirt that he was wearing the day he got blown up, and it has a cool explosion mark on it, but sadly he moved to Texas, so I can't really see it anymore. But anyways, that's pretty much the story I got for today. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like for more funny storytime videos, even though this wasn't really that funny, because it was really scary for me, but it might be kind of funny for you guys, because I blew up my neighbor, and yeah, so if you guys enjoyed the video, just make sure to leave a like, because it helps a lot, and I will know to do more storytime videos, so I'll see you guys later. Bye!